Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in this evening. My name is Chinyere Irandu, and I am the host of the Conflicted Womanist newsletter and community. And I've been a member of Foster for a few months now, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my experience here. I found very few places that intentionally focus on a community for writers to grow in their craft and to be able to connect with one another as they are building along the way. And so, as this is all happening in real time, I'm so especially excited because this evening, as you all are here, I had the pleasure to interview and be able to discuss and talk with our guest for the evening, Gabrielle Hickmon. And so I'm going to read a little bit about her bio and then we'll go ahead and get things going. How our conversation tonight is going to go is that we'll be able to just hear more about Gabrielle and her story and her journey as a writer and how she's been able to develop in her craft. And if at any point you have anything that you want to ask her or learn more about, please feel free in the chat to drop your questions in below and we will answer them. We really want this to be in time for you to have all your questions answered or at least just be able to know more about her and her work. So we'll do our best to answer your question and we're so thankful for you to be here this evening. So let me read a little bit about Gabrielle and her background. Gabrielle is a model for Black girls who live on the road, and she works as a writer, a strategist, and a multidisciplinary artist. As a cultural critic, Gabrielle's writing is concerned with the intersections and interactions of culture, travel, art, womanism, and Black life. Her essays have appeared in Conde Nast Traveler, The Baffler, Zora Magazine, Literary Hub, Complex, and Bitch Media, with work forthcoming in the pudding. And in 2018, she self-published a poetry book called Sunny. Gabrielle is currently based in Michigan, but has lived all of her life around the world and most recently in the Galatica area of Spain. And when she's online, you can find her at Gabby Hickman on social media. So Instagram, Twitter, the whole nine. You can find her and connect with her. But without further ado, Gabrielle, if you don't mind, please share more about who you are. And we're so glad to have you here this evening.
Hi, yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to chat with you and everybody else. It's so like weird to have your bio that she wrote about yourself right back to you. Like that's a little bit of unnerving. Um, what else is there to share? Yeah, I've been a writer my whole life. My parents would tell you that. I used to fill notebooks with like plays, and I always had a diary, and all of those things. And um, wish maybe when I was going to college that I would have like maybe chosen to pursue something a bit more creative than what I did. Um, and since then, have like had my own projects, websites for women of color, writing a book, a podcast, and really just decided along the way to like make creativity my career, and it's working out so far. So yeah.
That's awesome. So Gabrielle and I had the pleasure to be able to talk beforehand our chat this evening. And like you probably saw online, I have been fangirling. The fact that she is not just confined into one area, but really is able to cross many fields in her work and something that really caught my eye. And so one of the things that I want to hear more from you is definitely your beginning journey. How did you understand yourself as a writer and as other um, creative titles, but then also just growing personally, professionally, things of that sort. So I want to hear more about your story, how you began, and how you all just came up to be.
Yeah, so I feel like I had my first like digital blog. I mean, like we all had MySpace, we all had Tumblr, so those count like really early. But the first thing that I would maybe like openly claim, was like my senior year of high school, freshman year of college. I just wrote like a little WordPress blog, kind of about my like freshman year experiences. I'm pretty sure that nobody read it, like other than my parents. Like that's fine, that's great. We all start somewhere. Um, and from there, like during my time at Cornell, um, really just realized that I felt like I didn't see like the stories and experiences of myself and my friends like being told online. So started a platform called the Rain XY, which I ran for like 6 or 7 years. And that was both like my personal blog, but also a space for other women of color and especially Black women to like tell their stories, get some of their first bylines or like first features, things like that. Um, and I did that all through college and all through graduate school. After grad school, I'm living in Virginia, and kind of like not sure of just what I was doing next. And I ended up moving to Spain to teach English while there because I have a master's degree in international educational development. And Spain proved to be like such a fruitful time for me as a person, but also for me as a creative because I was able to kind of let the rain go. Like it reached a point where it was just like really hard to sustain by myself, like without funding. And I was wanting to pivot into doing more of the work that I'm doing now. And so I made the decision to like let the website go, take a bit of a break, and then like start freelancing um, more seriously. Like I had done like one off pieces before, but nothing like consistent. So made that decision in Spain and like vividly remember like going to this cafe down the street from my apartment and like sitting and writing out pitches, while I was like drinking my wine, and like I was like so cool. Um, and while I was also in Spain, I got really interested in photography. So I like was gifted um my first sort of like real camera by my parents. And I used that to like explore, but also document myself and my experiences abroad. Um, and then there was a Panasonic. And so I came home because who wants to like live out a Panasonic by themselves? And sorry, pandemic. Who wants to live out a pandemic by themselves, like around the world? Not me. Um, and coming home really gave me a chance to like just really think about like what is it that you want? Like what do you want to do? And how can you use the skills and talents that you have to get there? And so a part of me now working in like strategy and design is like I was doing all of that stuff for myself for all these years, right? Whether it was for like, designing the cover of Sunny myself, like coming up with that like marketing plan, right? Like designing assets for the rain or like coming up with an editorial calendar for that website. And it was like, well, you have these skills, you have proof that you can do these things. Like, why don't you try your hand at offering them as services? And some of that is like due to my friends because they were like, "You just do Instagram lives about everything, like, all this stuff, just like hop on Instagram and tell us about it." And so I did. And like the response was really encouraging. And I was like, okay, yeah, I can do this. And so I got from there like a couple um initial like smaller clients, and those spiraled into um some bigger and more like consistent retainer clients that I have now in just different projects. And then all the while throughout all of that, I was freelance writing as well for different publications.
Wow, that is honestly awesome. I went to like rewind back to the part where you mentioned where you lived in Spain and really just highlighting more of your travel experience, like you highlighted. One of the things that I perhaps all of us really want to know more about is how have your travel experiences, not just in a defensive code, but perhaps even at home, how has that shaped the way in which you write and shaped the way in which you converse with your audience and also shaped the way that you show up in the world and say that, yes, this is how I identify, or yes, this is what I practice, or yes, this is what I believe, or these that sort.
Yeah. I feel like travel has been so formative for me and it's like this thing that's been a constant throughout my entire life. Like even as a kid, we used to hop in the car and like we would drive to Florida, right? Like or we would drive to Alabama for family reunions and like different things like that. And I just always love the feeling of like being out on the road, being in motion, seeing new things and taking new things in. Um, and then in undergrad, I did a lot of work in service learning, which gave me opportunities to travel, but also to like do research and also to understand like how to move through the world ethically, or to at least try to move through the world ethically. Um, and that part of what led to me like doing a master's in international education was because I was at that point like not sold on the fact that I could make creativity my job. And I was like, well, okay, if I get a master's in this, like I can, work in that and travel and like that'll be, great, right? And I can just like write on the side. That obviously is like not, what happened, but that was like what I was thinking. And I think for me, travel has just opened up my mind to other ways of life and other like perspectives. It also is very humbling to realize that like, you're so small. Like you're the center of your world, but you're not the center of the whole world. And there are people all over the place who are just making such amazing contributions to the collective and creating really, really interesting stuff. And so yeah, I think travel helped me grow up, but travel also helps me really find my voice by like leaving where I was from, leaving everyone that I knew and having to figure out, well, like, who are you without all of this stuff? And what does that person want to say? I think has been really important for me in my journey.
That's beautiful. As you were speaking, and I remember there was an article that you wrote for, I believe it was Zora Magazine, correct me if I'm wrong, but your piece with highlighting the works of Audre Lorde in her time abroad. As you referenced Audre Lorde, and also your perspective and practice of womanism, have there been other womanist writers or other writers that have really informed the way that you write, think, and practice in your day-to-day life? Also, not just as a writer, but also as a creative.
I could literally go on about this for forever. Um, yeah, the Audre Lorde piece was for Literary Hub, and it was really exciting because it was kind of one of the first pieces that I wrote that I felt like I was like actually doing what I wanted to do and telling the stories that I wanted to tell. So when I first started freelancing, I was kind of easing my way into it, and I was still like telling travel stories, right? Because I was writing about like how moving to Spain changed my approach to wellness. I was writing travel guides to Turkey and Marrakesh, and I got commissioned to go on this press trip to Turkey, and like that was fantastic. But I knew that I wanted my work to have like a literary and sort of public intellectual streak to it. And maybe that's like really cringe to say, but whatever. Um, and so that piece was really just like kismet. Like I was talking in a Slack that I'm in, and someone just mentioned the 20th anniversary of the Berlin Wall, but also the the anniversary of Audre Lorde's time in Berlin. And I was like, and it might not be 20 years. It definitely wasn't. That was way off. And I was like, oh, well, like I have to write about this. And so I, tried to figure out like how are these things connected, right? Like, yeah, this is the past, but there's so much that we can learn from it because, the world, I don't know, like, is it that much better off since when the Berlin Wall was still up or coming down? Like, what would Audre Lorde have had to say about, where we are today? And so it was really exciting to like step into and analyze her work and just think about the impact that it had on Blackness in Germany, but also the implications that that has on like feminism around the world today. Um, so she's definitely someone that I look up to a lot. I mean, Alice Walker with In Search of Our Mother's Gardens is very much like a foundational text for me, particularly when she talks about like, what what Black artists like duties are. Um, and even just like how she shares her own journey and experiences. You can't talk about Black women writers without talking about Toni Morrison. She's just instructive for everyone, but I think Black women definitely hold her really dearly. Um, Maya Angelou, Nikki Giovanni, especially in terms of poetry, have been really influential for me. I met Nikki Giovanni when I was a kid, and somewhere have a picture of us. And I always kind of just like hold on to that memory, or the memory of the memory, I should say. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just always, I mean, Lorraine Hansberry, to be young, gifted, and black, a raisin in the sun, like Zora Neale Hurston. Oh my God, she's like the patron saint for me of my creativity. Like look up to and am fascinated by and like respect her so much just because she has done a lot of the things that I want to do, right? She was this whole anthropologist and amazing at that, but then also this amazing like fiction and essay writer, but was able to like merge the two. And I think, my highest vision for myself and my work is something like that. Um, that works with anthropology, that works with folklore, that works with just like real life everyday blackness. Um, and tells those stories or passes the mic, for folks to tell them themselves.
See, all of those writers, like, yes, they're definitely essential reads. One thing you mentioned as well, finding your voice. And as whether we find ourselves emerging into our craft or many years into the game, and I feel like that's something that we always are just toying with. Okay, how do I still stay authentic to my voice, and how do I still be able to contribute in a field or in an area that is already flooding information or perhaps lacking in information. Um, as creatives, and I think I'll just use that term broadly because we can find ourselves with our writing tool or, in different artistic mediums, things of that sort. Um, it's something that is very like healing and then also very soulful at its core to be able to continue in the conversation of what is already budding. So as you were speaking, and it was making me think of, yes, we have our infamous writers, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, and all the greats. How have you been able to tap in soulfully to those that have already gone before you so that you were able then to create something that is unique while honoring your voice and also honoring the voices of those who have gone already before you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of already said this, right? Like it's about continuing the conversation. And so some of it I think of as like excavating things that maybe have not been told and exalting that, like excavating and exhuming those stories of our ancestors and our foremothers that like didn't get their just due at the time or that were only told to us by not us. I think that's important. Like the the take that I'm gonna have on Black women as a Black woman is very different than maybe what historians who have traditionally been white are gonna have to say, right? And I think that matters. And so I'm very against this idea of like which one is it? Subjectivity, objectivity, whichever one it is. That's like you're supposed to sort of be like separate from your subject or whatever else. Like that's not really in my practice because I just one, I think it's kind of impossible. And two, I think it keeps us from like doing real work and also being able to. There's just a different take that I'm gonna bring to it as someone who's like of that culture and of that community, and like that is important and like matters too. Um, but I think really it's about like being in terms of like creating your own original work, it's about like being inspired and not so much like just like setting out to copy. So like with Sunny, my book, so much of that came from music. And that's like even how I found the title of it, right? Like it's a jazz song by Stanley Turrentine, but then that was also sampled by Jalen Fontroy, which is like the song that I heard. And then listening to that song made me go back and someone sent me the sample and I was like, that's the title for the book, right? But I think about it as like continuing in this tradition. So now when you see art projects that are called Sunny or you hear that song, right? You're not just getting the Stanley Turrentine track and then the Bobby Hebb track and then the Jalen Sonshore track. You're getting also Gabrielle Hickmon's book. And it's like a tradition and a legacy. And I think that um they've left so much for us to pick up and to learn from. And there's still so much that needs attending to. Like it's not even I feel like that we're saying different things than what they are. We're just saying them in different mediums and hopefully maybe a little bit louder because more people are paying attention. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, no, it does. Well, don't worry. It has. I went to kind of pivot just a little bit. But I know that amongst all of your titles, we want to also include, as you shared, that you are also a wellness advocate. And so I want to know more from you about how you've been able to balance creating for yourself, but then also creating for others. And how do you prioritize this connection between mind, body, and soul in all that you do without burnout or without overexerting yourself?
Yeah. I think boundaries,
Yeah.
like boundaries and a schedule. Um, for real is how that has to happen. And that's like first and foremost with myself, right? So if I want to tell clients or whomever, like, hey, I'm not going to be available past 6, then that means that I myself have to actually get off Slack or close the computer at 6 o'clock, right? So that it's like you actually can't reach me. So some of that has to like literally start with you because you can't expect people to respect your boundaries if you don't respect them for real, for real. But I think the other piece of that is just like finding practices that make me feel good. So whether that's like practicing yoga or going for a walk or eating really healthy food. I went vegan a couple of years ago, and so that's been super restorative to like really only eat like plants, like fruits and veggies, like that. That sort of makes you feel good. Trying to sleep 7 to 8 hours a night, like it's really just about, I think, for me, like boundaries, having good practices, and then like enforcing those things lovingly, like with myself and with other people.
Perfect. And so definitely take the diet aspect of not eating meat anymore. I feel a little bit convicted to trying to like shift gears on what I eat, but we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully it can work out. Not sure. But more so, um, yeah, so boundaries are definitely so important as I saw here from our comment in the chat. Um, Now that you've been able to set your boundaries, know more about who you are, know your working styles, just things of that sort, how have you then been able to propel your own career? And so when to shift gears into hearing more about Sunny, when hearing more about how you self publish, and then ultimately how are you to sustain yourself and things that you're doing now.
Yeah, I think it's about having like a balanced practice. So I don't necessarily rely on like any one freelance stream for money, right? So I wrote Sunny and never had the expectation that like people would still be buying it years later, but like they are. So every couple of months I'll get it like it's not like a ton of money by any means, but I'll get, a couple of dollars for Amazon and that counts like streams of income, right? And then I can always sort of like do more or less writing depending upon how other things are going. And then having clients as well is great because that's able to balance out the freelance writing. So maybe like none of my pitches got picked up. Okay, well, like, can I do a quick small project for someone type of thing, right? Um, and so it's just for me about like having different pillars. I'm working right now on developing some like passive income product that can be more like I created this resource once, you can buy it whenever you want to, but like I don't have to like touch it all the time, right? Because like with clients, you're in meetings or like you're, creating deliverables, whatever else. And that's great. Like very grateful for the opportunity, but um also know that there are other things that like, I can do an offer that will be sort of less like demanding on my time long term. So that's one way that I think about that. And then just in terms of just going back to boundaries for a second, one other thing that I do is take like a creative help day a week. So I don't do work for other people or sometimes work at all on Thursdays. Um, that's just like a day that I keep for me. And so I can do whatever I want, right? If I want to write for myself, if I want to like take a bunch of pictures, I can do that. But if I also want to just like go to Sephora and buy a bunch of makeup, like I can do that too. And so that really helps me with boundaries and really helps me with like grounding myself and my practice as well, for sure.
That's awesome. I want to also learn a bit more about how, so say there's a writer, say there's a new writer that's like, Gabrielle, please help me out. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel so confused. I feel like I'm a writer. I feel like I'm a creative. I feel like I'm X, Y, and Z, but I just don't know how to begin. What would you tell them? And perhaps if there's something that you would have told your younger self as you started out in your own journey, what would that be?
Wow. I think I would tell myself, like, just get doing work sooner. I can very much be a person because, like, I do a lot of research, right? I trained in it in school and it's kind of just like a part of my practice. But, like, at a certain point, the research has to stop and you just have to try it and do it because that's the only way that you'll figure out, like, what's working, what isn't, what needs to change. So that's definitely one thing I would say. I would also say, like, trust in, what it is that you are feeling like you want to share. Like, it wouldn't have been given to you if there wasn't a reason for it. And then I would also say, like, you probably, like, you might not need as much um help or mentorship as you think. So a lot of people think that, well, if I can just get this mentor, someone who's done X, Y, Z, then, like, that will help me get to X, Y, Z place. And that can be true, but I also think that networking across, which Issa Rae is all about, is a lot more um like practical, but also potentially valuable and easier to have happen. Um, and then you're able to really build with people and come up alongside them and, like, grow your careers and your work together. And that's been really rewarding. And I'm really grateful and thankful for, like, the relationships that I have with other creatives um, who are in sort of similar places to me, or even those who are a little bit further ahead of me or a little bit behind me. It's all helpful, but I think just, like, we're all people. There's no need to, like, put people, like, on, like, pedestals, I think I would say, or thinking that, like, someone else can be the magic bullet or the answer to your, like, career troubles or creative, like, breakout. Like, at the end of the day, like, it has to be for you and you have to be doing your own work. Um, because you can quickly find yourself caught up if that's not the case.
That is so true. Back at Sunny, can you share with us more about what your self-publishing journey looked like? So we're still like, it's so awesome to know that you self-published your book, but what does that look like in terms of like the behind the scenes, the not so pretty parts? And for anyone who perhaps is thinking about self-publishing or has heard about it, just not so sure, can you share us more about how that went?
Yeah. So self publishing is, like, interesting because you are literally the be all end all everything for your book. Unless you have the money to, like, hire people to help you or have friends who will help you. I had friends who read Sunny and gave me feedback for free, and, like, friends who I, talked through marketing things with and whatever else. But, like, at the end of the day, really and truly, it's all on you. Um, I wrote Sunny in a period of, like, 6 months. So from, like, November to March 2017 to 2018. Then I released it April 2018. Um, and I hand wrote it before I ever typed it. So I wrote it in, like, one of my journals. And then I also pulled different poems and pieces from stuff that I had previously published um, on the rain, which was really, really helpful because I already had, like, some material there. Um, and then, yeah, you just put it out into the world. And, like, for me, Sunny was such an exercise in just, like, self, like healing, self, um, creativity. Like, yes, I shared it, but at the end of the day, it was, like, for me, so it really wouldn't have mattered how folks, like, did or didn't respond to it. Um, what's great about self-publishing, of course, is that, like, you get to keep all of your rights and all of your royalties. And, like, in the past, you definitely sort of needed, like, a traditional book deal to maybe, like, create your own books or, like, your own lane through books. And now that's really not the case. Don't get me wrong. Like, I want to be traditionally published one day too, but, like, it's not like, mandatory, I guess I would say.
So that definitely gives more clarity. And so I think one last thing where we segue out, and again, for our audience here, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Um, we'll keep them off the recording so that way you can just speak as freely. But the last question that we have on this end is, how have you been able to, build your own career? And you shared with us more about how you've been able to, um, you know, work full time as a creative. But how have you been able to build your own career, um, but still resisting the idea that a job's still a job kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm just allergic to that. Like for real, for real. I mean, it's listen, it's one thing if like, you know, you're down bad and you need to put food on the table, right? Then you're gonna do what you gotta do. But I'm not down bad, which means that like we spend so much time at work that I just like can't wrap my head around doing something that I hate or like don't enjoy every day. Um, and I think yeah, I feel like I've built my career I mean, again, doing a lot of research, like taking a lot of classes, leaning into my network, but then also, like I said, like trying and playing at things. I didn't know 6 years ago that doing the rain was gonna prepare me to, like, work with clients, right? But, like, it all comes together as it comes together. Um and I think in terms of freelancing, like particularly with writing, it was just about like getting that first clip and not being afraid to use examples of things that I had written for myself of proof that I could write. So in those early pitches, like I was including links to stuff that was on my website, right? And then as I got more bylines under my belt, particularly bylines at like bigger or well-known publications, I was able to sort of switch to using those. And now I'm in this place where um I'm really happy with the quality of my work. Like I'm not that writer who's gonna have a byline or who has had a byline like every month or every week or whatever else, right? But like when I do write something, it's meaningful. It's telling the story that I want to tell. It's typically uplifting Black people and Black stories because, like, that's at the heart of what I do and what I'm about. Um, and so I might not have hundreds of clips on my page, but each clip that I have in my portfolio, I'm really proud of. And I also know like really good work. And so now I feel like I'm in this place where um not that I've done enough, but just that, like, just continuing to be judicious and intentional about what I want to publish, where I want to publish, what stories I want to tell. Um, instead of just trying to like put anything out there. You know what I mean? Like I think a lot about like I want there to be a certain level of excellence, a certain level of intention whenever you see Gabrielle Ione Hickmon in the byline. Like, I want you to feel like you're going to get um, a good, well thought out, well researched, but also like interesting piece. And so that's maybe a slower process um, than maybe what we expect or what we think it should be. Like, I'm not a content farm. Um, I'm here to yeah, I'm here to do my work.
Yeah.
And I'm okay if that like takes maybe a little bit longer. But so yeah, I feel like I'm in a place where like I'm trying to focus and think more long term. So what does a book proposal look like instead of like smaller articles? What does it look like to experiment with new ways of putting my work out there? Whether it's my newsletter or whether it's like doing all of the steps that I would to write an article that I would typically put in a publication and like selling that myself as a PDF for a couple bucks, right? Like these are things that I'm thinking about. Um, and just new ways of being that I'm trying to experiment with because I think I'm happy with my body of work so far.
That's awesome to have that level of contentment, and especially in a pace and receive where it's like publish, 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 release, 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 and this resistance to say no, I'd rather produce quality over quantity. That's something that's really remarkable. Um, last thing, can you share with us more what a typical day looks like for you or a typical week? And then also, where can we connect with you? We want to go purchase your book. We want to go and connect with you on social. So please let us know how we can do so.
Yeah, a typical week. So Mondays, I like don't take meetings. I'm usually doing like admin stuff, contracts, emails, client proposals, stuff like that. Tuesdays is usually just a meeting day, meeting and then client work day, back to back to back. I'm usually really drained at the end of the Tuesday. Wednesdays right now is either client work or client meeting. Thursdays are for me. And then Fridays are a really big writing day. Um, and usually I'll also write like for an hour or so in the morning before I start doing like client work, but I also will block out a couple hours on a Friday to just like sit in my room or in my office by myself and write. And then my days, yeah, I mean, I'm usually up around like 7:38. I used to be that like, oh, I need to be team 5 a.m. morning. It's like it's just not realistic for me. There are hundreds of thousands of other ways to be productive. Like what works for you doesn't have to work for me. That's fine. So I get up when I get up. I do morning pages, which I learned from Julia Cameron of The Artist Way. I'll practice yoga and then I'll make like breakfast. So like grab some fruit, get my matcha or like some tea or something, right? And then I'll like sit down to write, sit down to work. I'm still kind of on Spanish time, so I take my lunch break at like 2, which is much later than most Americans eat lunch. Um, and then like try to really take an hour for myself, like from 2 to 3. I do some more work. I try to be offline, done for the day at like 6, because it's just like nothing is ever really actually that much of an emergency. Like a lot of this is not brain surgery. Like a lot of this can wait until tomorrow. And so I really try to like protect my evenings so I can like have a good dinner, spend time with family, spend time with friends, or like again, go to Sephora on a Wednesday afternoon and like buy makeup or go to the thrift store or whatever else. Um, I also newly started pottery class, so that's a new medium that I'm working with now. So I'll go to the pottery studio a couple times a week to play with some clay, and that's been really, really enjoyable. So that's typical like week or day. Um, and then where can you find me? That was the other question. Yeah, so I'll drop some links in the chat. Sunny, you can get on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And if you just search like Gabrielle Hickmon and she'll come up. I have a newsletter called To Be Continued where I share insight into my process for other works in progress. And I've been writing those once a week or so. It's not like, oh, here's what you should put on your website, or oh, here's all of my latest work. It's more like exploring the human side of creativity. Like, what does it look like to actually set boundaries and like try to take care of yourself while you're pursuing all of the sort of like work that you do, right? Like it's about the person that I am more, I think. This is my Twitter. So and then this is my Instagram. And they're just at Gabby Hickmon, but I spell Gabby Gabby. Um, yeah.
Well, Gabrielle, I want to thank you so much for spending time out of your busy schedule to talk with us. And I don't want to speak for everyone else, but I know for myself, I've been thoroughly enriched by what you've shared with us.